Hello, my name is Salim Dababneh, otherwise known as Sal, and I'm going to be presenting today for Group 3 on our CIT class, System Security, and we're going to be presenting on the client-side wireless attacks. And so with that in mind, we're going to talk about what is a wireless attack. So client-side wireless attack are those that exploit vulnerabilities directly against individual devices such as laptops, tablets, cell phones, gaming consoles, you name it. And they do so by leveraging the wireless connections that have limited or no security within them. Some examples of this is like email communication, messaging, FTP connections, Bluetooth, things of that nature. Now, what are they, as far as the different types of attacks that are out there? We've got things like impersonation. Somebody could take and, if you've ever traveled to a hotel and they have like a lobby Wi-Fi, somebody could mimic that Wi-Fi name, and users who have saved that Wi-Fi login and said, set their device to always connect or to automatically connect to that name if they see it, I could replicate that MAC address, that name, and I could impersonate what is supposed to be a true Wi-Fi network, but just be a rogue one in a sense, and try and steal and get data to connect to my network, and then I have access to their systems. So things like that. We have man-in-the-middle attacks, where session hijacking, where somebody can try and steal your session ID in the middle of a connection. So when you log into different websites, there maintains a session token that you share back and forth. A lot of websites you probably visit will maintain your access until, maybe it's been a week or so. They'll have you re-log in. If you think of things like Facebook or LinkedIn, a lot of times when you visit that same site with the same machine, it's going to maintain that session ID. So session hijacking is where somebody steals that and then mimics your connection to get into your system. Evil twin is where people set up, kind of like I talked about the impersonation, setting up that same type of replicated device so people automatically connect to that. War driving, we're going to give you an example of that today here in our presentation. That's essentially where people, where you go around and actually identify, while driving around town, all the wireless connections, document those and actually identify those that have limited security that you can access. Rogue access points, header manipulation, bluejacking, blue snarfing. These are some of the other ones that you have to keep in mind as well. And so for today, though, we're going to actually focus in on the war driving one, which is found to be a little interesting. So in this short video demonstration, we're going to show how easily Wi-Fi signal information can be gathered in. This information can provide easy identification of signals that are using outdated encryption methods. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. This was me actually using my Android device earlier today to drive around my community and pick up some Wi-Fi signals in the area. And so go ahead and play this through. And so basically you connect with this Wiggle Wi-Fi program, a free download on the Android device, and it'll start tracking all the different signals around. You notice right here I've got one that's a WPA connection or encryption. And so we already know from, recently where we did our cracking of WPA connections, we know that that's something that's outdated encryption. This is me looking around the neighborhood during my son's soccer practice, so I was kind of back in that area there and identified a number of different sites. Now, actually what I did with that same program, you'd actually export the data out to a KML file. And so if I take something like Google Earth, I can actually take the output from that program, and I'm going to actually open that. Open here. I'm going to take that KML file I generated earlier today, and you see it's actually going to go ahead and plot and map all of those locations. So you can imagine if somebody spent enough time with this, they could really just basically go track their whole city. So this is the city I live in here in northern Texas, and my son was playing soccer right over here. And so when I started, I was actually just sitting in the parking lot. I was sitting back here behind. There was a black Yukon SUV sitting over here, and they actually had Wi-Fi on board. I could tell because of the signal that was coming up for that actual SUV. And so as I was sitting at soccer practice, I noticed, I think probably 30 devices or 30 Wi-Fi signals coming up almost right away. So what I did is I just did one little trip. You can see I kind of followed this path here, drove around turned into this cul-de-sac and drove right back. By the time I did that short trip, I had identified almost 100 different Wi-Fi signals that were available in the neighborhood. So this is called war driving. This is basically where you come around and identify and track and document those connections. So that information that I gathered in, I'm going to pull it back up, was all available through this little app that cost me nothing, or connected right to my Wi-Fi using my GPS from my Android device. And so all this information is now available, and I can download that and use that for purposes of finding free Wi-Fi or other nefarious reasons. So that's war driving. Now, to protect against war driving, what you want to do is make sure that you're not necessarily broadcasting your signal, but that's not enough, really. A lot of people think they can just turn off their signal. I'm not going to broadcast. But with tools like this, they're actually going to pick up hidden networks that are not broadcasting. And so obscurity isn't security. Really, you want to focus on encryption and encrypt all things, cross communication back and forth. And so when we talk about the different ways to identify and defend against these things, you really want to use strong encryption methods. You want to avoid older methods. You want to avoid public networks, places like airports, hotels, and restaurants. You don't want to just connect to there and start using them for logging into personal accounts or doing your banking. For certainly wouldn't want to do that. You also want to set your browser permissions to require prompting you for downloads or installations. You want to keep your antivirus software up to date. And bidirectional authentication, something we learned about in this week's reading, where when I go to connect to your site, I get feedback from the site to make sure I'm getting a proper connection. And you want to have tools that are maintaining, kind of like sniffing out any sort of session ID jacking tools, making sure nobody else is picking up that session ID. So there's a number of different ways to protect against this. Encryption is probably the biggest thing, and just being smart out there. So that's our presentation on client-side wireless attacks, and look forward to your feedback in the comments section. Thanks so much.